Okay, so this is take like 2 billion of this video. I hope it works this time. The audio quality should be better because I got a mic. But otherwise, cross your fingers. Let's hope this works. This is my vlog about the INTP experience connected to my Tumblr, where I blog about being an INTP, having problems, social anxiety, being an academic, all of the above. So that's kind of where all of this fits in. I'm going to be talking a little bit more today about the dominant INTP cognitive functions, introverted thinking, and extroverted intuition, which map us into the world. Our cognitive functions map us into the world. They give us a way of understanding what's going on around us and then putting ourselves into that and then behaving accordingly. And that's kind of the origin of personality. It's not about inborn traits. It's not about whether you're more happy or more melancholic or more outgoing or more introverted. If you want a very detailed philosophical take on that topic, I recently reblogged a post, and I can't remember the author's name, suggesting a view of Myers-Briggs typology as a kind of cognitively based phenomenology of personality, which is really cool. You should go read that post. It's quite long. Some of the philosophy and the theory is a little up there, but it's pretty easy to follow along. So anyway, as an academic or as a fledgling academic, the cognitive functions of introverted thinking and extroverted intuition, because the two really go together, and they kind of balance each other out, and they determine really what it's like to be an INTP. They've manifested in a variety of ways for me, some positive and some negative. As a senior in undergrad, I was very overwhelmed by the experience of having these dual functions kind of define my entire mental process. And by define my entire mental process, I mean I felt like I was a prisoner of my own mental constructions, and I felt like I couldn't control the way that my brain would immediately take some nugget of an idea or a facet of my experience, usually some kind of interconnected perspective that I had intuited from just observing things, and just like spin out crazy, go crazy with it, build all sorts of interconnections with other things I'd experienced, build stories based off of it, come up with new ways to stage that information, make it usable, adapted to new situations, all of that sort of thing. I felt it was exhausting. It was really exhausting, and I felt like I was not in control of my brain, the use to which my brain put all of my information or my experiences. My brain did things with the experiences I had and the information I was processing that I didn't feel in control over. I didn't feel like I needed it to do. It was not something I was willfully doing, or at least that I knew I was doing. It was exhausting, and it was confusing, and it was a little terrifying at times because OCD runs in my family, and my fraternal twin sister, so not identical, dizygotic sister, grew up with OCD, and watching that has made me very wary of kind of repeated obsessive mental processes, because OCD is not just about having a compulsion, like to do a certain thing. It's about repeated cycles of thought that will not be interrupted no matter what you do. And that's quite a bit how I felt about what my brain was doing, and I couldn't control it. So I remember as a senior, I was at work once and I had to leave. I just had to walk outside, go sit in the park by the chapel or something, on my campus. And it was this really nice little grassy area with trees and a brook, and I would just stare up at the trees and think, those are trees. That is green. Those are leaves. That is a squirrel. This is grass. That was the wind. And just kind of repeat over and over to myself while staring at the trees, 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 those are trees, trees exist, and force myself out of an immediate sort of trip that my mind would take, no matter what I experienced. It wouldn't just be trees. It would be everything I could think of that was related to trees, trees as part of a story, trees factoring into another facet of my experience, something I remembered about trees. It was this constant narrativization of everything I experienced. And that got really, really exhausting. And it made going to sleep kind of impossible. So I honestly thought it was crazy. I told one of my mentors, I was like, I think I'm going crazy. And I had to stop and really sit and kind of get a handle on what my brain was doing. And then, so recently, now that I've been thinking more about, learning more about Myers-Briggs typology and the cognitive functions, I realized, well, that is how my brain works. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes that's very helpful, and it's been very helpful as an academic with languages, being able to constantly have this updating system, big systematic, big picture view of what's going on. So any tiny little snippet that I encounter, whether I'm translating or whatever, I know where in my mind that bit fits, even if I don't know what that bit is. So I can very easily kind of intuit my way around things in my external environment based on this subjectively constructed mental framework that is constantly updating and is working very dynamically in step with everything I intuit. It's been very helpful as a historian to come to a big picture kind of view about why things happen historically, what's going on in a given context, the way that context and culture give meaning to phenomena in historical circumstances. For example, I study late antique asceticism, so it makes a lot of sense for me to have this big mental model of everything that's going on and all the different, not just political and geographical and sort of real world events in late antiquity in the Mediterranean, but also kind of the intellectual models and the intellectual discourses that are happening at that time, and then see how different facets of a phenomenon, or how different phenomena fit into that big picture model. So my experience as an academic has been really benefited from my cognitive functions, or my way of encountering the world. That was my phone. But personally, it's been very difficult for me to gain mastery over one thing or another. Really, I'm just focused on becoming competent in anything. You'll see this in descriptions of INTPs quite often, is, I like to become competent in one thing or another, or with one skill or another, because it helps me fix that piece of a model I was working on, but then I need to move on because there are other things to work on. Also, it's made it difficult for me to be practically minded, to pay attention to things like, oh, I've got to do paperwork to graduate, or oh, I've got to record grades, or that's kind of worrying me about the teaching that I'm going to be doing this fall. I'm going to be teaching 5 classes. That is bonkers. That's just bonkers. I've never taught before, so I'm a little worried and a little intimidated. I hope it works out. But the managing of all of those different schedules, some of which are just crazy, because I don't know what people are thinking with the way they schedule classes these days at some schools. It's just weird. Anyway, so yeah, there are just a lot of practical factors that I'm not looking forward to having to manage, and that I've never done well with. I mean, I'm always scrambling at the last minute to turn paperwork in, or make sure my rent gets paid, or I don't know. I leave things to the last possible minute because they just don't fit. Sometimes they just don't fit in my my model of what I'm currently working with, so they just get kind of tossed. And that's what happened with languages that I used to work with pretty well, that haven't been useful to my scholarship recently, like Hebrew. I haven't looked at Hebrew, I haven't needed to use Hebrew in a very long time, so all of the work that I did to gain some competence in Hebrew has just whoosh, flown out the window. I could rediscover it, I could get very quickly back right into the swing of things and probably remind myself of how to do Hebrew, but it's just not been useful or necessary recently, so it's just kind of flown out the window. Again, the kind of systematic mental model of things has been helpful, especially with all the dead languages that I've been working with recently, like Greek and Coptic and Latin and things like that. So anyway, so if any of these experiences has been relevant to you, or you've resonated with some of them, or you have a kind of something else you'd like to add along these lines, or you have some other way that TINE has been a hindrance or a blessing to you in your life, whatever you do, whether you're an academic or not, please, INTPs, drop me a line, whether here in the comments on YouTube, or text comment, video comment, or on Tumblr. Tumblr's great. Anonymous, you can be anonymous if you want. But just drop me a line, and I'd love to get a conversation started about this. I really hope this video uploads. I really don't want to do this again. If I have to do this again, I will see you for take number 4 billion. Please, cross your fingers, cross your fingers. I'll see you next time. Thanks.